Hey everyone, Leo with Dreaming Tree, and welcome to the assembly video for our Bauble ornament. I had to say that 3 times. It took 3 takes because it just sounds like a tongue twister. But anyway, this is the second of the 4 that I'm putting together. I started with the nutcracker, and just like before, and this is if this is your first one, just FYI, these are the main structural pieces for this ornament. And what you want to do is, before you get started, take a minute and fold everything at the score marks, just so everything is ready to go. That helps loosen up the fibers and will make the assembly much easier. And then this time around, opted not to do any inking on these pieces here. I'm just going to kind of keep them just simple. And since this is the Bauble, we've got a series of bows. I made 3 of them off camera because it's redundant. It's the same thing. You're gonna make a total of 4 of these, and we're gonna actually do that first. I did do a little bit of inking on the actual bows. So anyway, what I did was I started with, you're gonna start with this piece. Obviously it's gonna be flat, and I took a 3/8 inch dowel and just pinched the paper between my finger and the dowel and angled it about 90 degrees and just ran the dowel through each of these sides for both of these loops. Okay, and then I took the dowel and put it in the center of each of the loops and just folded it over. Okay, and that's going to prevent a crease from forming there when we go to glue this together, so that's helpful. You could probably just use your finger, wrap it around your finger. It's pretty round. I think it would get the job done. I've got a whole collection of dowels that I use for various things in my crafts, so that's what I gravitated towards. Okay, so anyway, what we're going to do, you'll notice that there is a little rectangle here. It's kind of like a tab. And what we're going to do is we're going to put glue on just the rectangular area here. Nice and thin, very easy. You'll also notice that there's a little rectangle here in the center too. We're going to take this rectangle and match it up with the one in the center. Now there's going to be some tension here. So you're going to want to pull this paper, that little tab up, so make sure you press and hold that firmly and that it's fully set, or mostly set anyway, before you move on. Okay, so I'm going to actually continue holding that while I work on the other side here. There's also another tab here. We'll put a little bit of glue on there, a nice thin layer. You don't need to overdo it. Okay, right on there, and then we're going to take that and bring it right onto that center rectangle and press and hold that in place. Okay, just continue to squeeze that while it sets. Now we have a tail, and we have the center of the little bow right here. I'm going to grab the center, and it doesn't matter which side you do it on. You're going to take it and lay it right in the center of that little rectangle, and there are no score lines on this. You're just going to take and fold it back behind to the back of the bow. Okay, and they should kind of overlap slightly. So what we'll do is we'll put glue on one of these ends here. We'll take the other one and pop it right on top of where we just placed that glue. And we're going to hold that down for just a few moments while it sets. I'm really giving it a good squeeze because that does somehow speed things up, and you can see how nice that looks in the center there. Looks like we actually made a nice bow. Okay, so now we can take and put glue on this rectangular section on the back. Okay, and then I'm going to take my, well, you want to put it down this way, like this, but I'm just looking at it from the back. Okay, this is the back. This is the front, this is the front, this is the back. And there is a flat edge up here. You want to line that up with the little rectangle in the center of the bow and bring that down slightly so that it's hidden behind that rectangular area. You don't want it poking up past that. Okay, now while I'm holding it, I'm going to flip it around and just make sure that it looks nice and centered. Okay, you can grab a small dowel and take and just kind of curl these petals, not petals, well, kind of like petals, the ends of the tail. Just kind of curl them in to give them a little extra dimension, and that is how you construct a paper bow. And I have 4 of them here. And we're going to put those onto the final ornament when everything is said and done. Okay, aside from that, the only other things that we have here are these panels, the main structure, and then the little top that we're going to feed our string through. So that we can actually use it as an ornament. So speaking of which, we may as well just kind of get this assembled. You'll notice that there's a little tab here, and we're going to put some glue on that tab, get it all the way out to the edge, and we're going to bring it over to the opposite side and line that up like so, and we're going to press and hold that. Now, this is a glitter paper, and it's like that POW paper, so it's not true glitter, but it's not as porous as paper, and I'm gluing it to itself, and on the back of this, it's really not porous at all. It's very smooth. So you just want to connect those two sections, and what you can actually do, because this is a symmetrical piece, you can flatten it, and you can literally just put it down flat now while you continue pushing down on this seam here where we join the two sections together. Okay, I'm just going to keep holding that down because, again, sometimes this glitter paper does take a few extra moments to get a hold. Okay, but that looks great. And now what we can do is we're going to take these tabs right here, we're going to bring them down, and we're going to close this up. It could be helpful to just leave this on your table like this so it's not just floating in midair, and try to get this section here, this tab, opposite of where it's already hinged. Try to line that up so it looks like it's, you know, straight. Okay, that will help get this in place correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go a little bit heavier on the glue here because, again, I'm using it's kind of like a glitter, so it's a very smooth texture being glued to another smooth texture, and I might need to, I just might need a little extra glue on that. Okay, so I'm going to close this up. I'm going to focus on aligning it with this side here, the side opposite of where it's hinged. Okay, so that is priority number one. Get that lined up, and then take a look at the rest of the perimeter. Normally when you do that, you'll find that it just kind of fits perfectly. And if you need to kind of nudge any of these areas in a little bit, now's the time to do it. And continue pressing down and try to make contact with as many of these sides as you can. And even if it means just kind of bouncing around back and forth. Now, I think that the edges are holding, so I'm going to flip this over real quick, and I'm going to press down with the dowel on the rest of the tab there so that we get a little bit of help from the rest of that surface area. Flip it back over and continue working those edges. And, you know, this paper, this glitter paper, is actually very nice to work with because it is kind of thin. It's strong, but it's thin. So you can get those seams to look really nice. Now, it is a white core, okay, and I'm going back into my stash of inks here, and I'm pulling out some of my gold ink. Okay, this is as close as I'll probably have to this. But because this is a white core, a little bit of that white is showing on the side here. So what you can do is just take your ink pad and just rub a little bit of gold onto that white if it doesn't look to your standards. It doesn't look good. Mine was barely visible, but remember, I'm taking photographs of these for our website, and I want everything to look as natural as possible. It's paper, but it doesn't have to screen paper. You could be like, well, that looks like metal, maybe, slightly. Okay, so there's the top. And one little thing to note is that it's a good idea to feed your string through before we glue it down, because otherwise it's going to be kind of hard to do. So I'm just going to do that now. I'll feed it through both loops, or both holes, I should say. And now obviously I have way too much string here. So I'm going to trim this. Okay, and I'll tie it off just so that it's ready to go. Okay, so we got our bows done. We've got the top of our ornament done. And then we just have to put together the actual ornament. And there we go. I'm just going to keep that like that for now. You can pull this up. And there we go. Put that off to the side, and let's grab the main structure here. Okay, so it's this guy here. And what we're going to do first is we're going to join these two sections together to make it one continuous section. And we're going to achieve that by applying glue first and foremost to this tab here. Let me clean off my nozzle real quick. Okay, let's get our glue on this tab. I'm working a little bit of glue out to the very edge of the tab so that that seam stays nice and clean. And we'll grab the other half and let's line it up. Okay, so it's kind of an awkward piece to hold, so find the grip that works best for you. You can actually move some of this stuff out of the way if you want. There we go. Just get that nice and lined up. You can tell it's lined up properly up at the top especially, because you'll see that it just kind of continues in that path up at the top where that opening is. And actually that is the bottom, sorry. Okay, press that down, make sure that seam is nice and clean. If you had a little bit of glue that came out, just kind of rub it off. If it stays inside the, and actually we've got panels that are going to cover this up, so no harm there. Okay, so what we're going to do next, since we have this all put together, I'm going to press this down just to make sure. We are going to start, actually, you know what? I think what we can do is glue this down. You know what, let's join it when everything is said and done. Okay, so I'm going to start here on this tab, this little guy here, and just kind of dab that with my finger, thin it out, and we're going to tuck that right behind its neighbor. I'm going to make sure that those lines, this edge and the area where the score mark is, are nice and lined up. It should be perfectly straight up and down. No, there's nothing angled here. It's straight up and down. Okay, so that's all we needed to do there. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and build this. There's a bunch of ways that we can do this, okay? I'm going to show you one way, but know that there's no wrong or right way to do this. If you want, you could technically glue this tab down to the back here to close this whole shape at the bottom, and then work your way up one section at a time. I think that ultimately, because the hole up here is kind of small, just big enough for one finger or a dowel, I think the best way of doing this is to actually do it kind of, do the center section first and then do the top section. Okay, and that being the case, let's go ahead and close this up actually. Let's close this up here. So let's grab some glue, put it on the large tab that was on the other half. Spread that glue out nicely, and let's tuck that in there. Oops. You can move these out of the way so you can get your hand in there. And just line that up nicely. From the bottom to the middle section here, everything should be nice and smooth, and technically, you could actually put that down flat. Well, no, you can't now because I already glued one other tab together. Sorry about that. Let's go back to this. There we go. And just press that down into place. See how that's looking. It's a little bit off there at the bottom. There we go. Okay. Okay, so back to this section here. We'll go ahead and start working on these little triangular tabs. Okay. Thin that glue out. You don't need a lot of glue there. It's a very small area. We don't need to cake that with a ton of glue. Okay, and just press and hold that. Shouldn't take more than a few seconds. Okay, and on to the next one here. Let's try to keep the glue on this section only. Don't get it on that area there. Okay, grab that next piece, line it up, just like that. Should be straight up and down here. There's an angle here, and then it curves in as well on the next section. Okay, so now this tab's a little bit larger because this is where the two sections were joined. Perfect. And Let me move this out of the way so I can get my hand in here. Line that up. Perfect. There we go. So you get the idea here. This might be the first time that I've actually done it in this manner where I'm going around this way. But again, it's mostly because we don't have a lot of clearance up at the top to close this shape up once we get to the end. Okay, so there we go. Next tab, line it up and press it into place. Here we go. And a couple more to go here. This one's a little bit easier, I think, than the Nutcracker that I just got done doing because, well, it's made up of just one section where the Nutcracker has two. It's got the little hat portion and the face, but that thing was not that was difficult at all, actually. It was very fun to make, and it turned out better than I thought it would, as is usually the case. Okay, so on to the next one here. There's our tab. Very thin amounts of glue. I just did a couple dots, and then I take the rest and spread it out on that entire tab with my finger by just kind of dabbing it. And line that up. Perfect. There we go. Okay, so we're getting ready to close this up now. Here's one more tab. This one's a little bit larger. So we'll get our glue on this guy. And I'm going to dab that. Try to keep it off of the other surfaces, even though we're going to mostly hide that stuff. Then we got to tuck that back under and press that into place. I actually had this tab come undone when I did that. I'll fix that real quick though. So if that happens to you, you get a little tab that pulls apart because you didn't let it dry all the way. Get a scrap piece of paper, put a little bit of glue right on the end in the corner. Just paint a little bit of glue right in the section where you need it. And then take that tab and just pop it right back into place. And just press and hold for a moment. Now I've got 2 layers of glue there, so this one, unfortunately, when you start putting glue on top of glue, because you messed up, it's going to take longer for things to set. So we want to be a little more patient. Okay, so you get the idea here on what's happening. I'm going to pull some of these out just to kind of make room for my hand. We're going to close this up here like this by connecting these sections to this larger tab. Okay, so let's get our glue on one of these tabs. Doesn't matter which one. This thing's basically at this point, it's identical all the way around with a few exceptions. Okay, we'll take that, tuck that right behind its neighboring section and press that into place. Just like that. Okay, and you see how quickly I'm working here, and that is a testament to going easy on the glue. You're going to spend a lot more time waiting for things to dry if you've got, you know, layers and layers of glue on here. I like to just have a nice thin layer covering that piece of paper. Okay. It's so much cleaner too. You don't get all that glue shooting out of the seams there. It's very enjoyable. Okay, moving on to the next one here. Same process all the way around. Nothing different here. So I think, depending on, okay, just continuing the same process here. Get that nice and lined up, as accurate as you can. Okay, so just moving on here to the next tab. And during my, you guys probably don't realize this, but we do these tutorials in 20-minute increments because every 20 minutes I have to hit record on my camera. There's a weird reason for that I'm not going to get into, but during the break, I decided that I'm going to add some ink to these panels, and that's what I did. So we were going to just not put ink on these, but one little tip that I'll mention is that sometimes with dimensional pieces like this, where we're trying to create something that's round out of something that's kind of boxy, when we put these panels down, adding a little bit of ink to the edges, well, darkens the edges and kind of hides any potential imperfections that we may encounter as a result of applying the panels. Also, I think it's aesthetically nice. I think it looks good. So there's kind of it's a twofold sort of reason why you would want to ink in it, especially in a case like this, where again we're working on a dimensional item like this. Okay, so almost there. We've got a couple more of these large tabs, and then we just need to put the top together. There's a series of small tabs there, and you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of dabbing this with my finger, and that's the reason why I'm just breezing through this. Keeping the glue nice and thin and tacky. Not only does it help you get it into place a lot quicker, but it dries a lot faster. Okay, and see this little hole up here, just big enough for one finger or a dowel. That's going to come in handy in a little bit here. Now, all that dabbing does kind of eventually leave a little bit of a residue on your fingers. You just have to let it dry and then just rub it off, and you're back to point A. Okay, so now here's something that's a little tricky, but it's not hard. Now, we're going to apply glue to this tab here. Okay, so let's do that. And we're going to glue this down, just like we've been. This time we're going to take the final tab there and tuck that under here so that it's inside of our bauble. I'm just going to call it an ornament. I feel weird saying bauble all the time. Okay, and that hole is perfect for a little dowel right there. It's going to be tough to get your finger all the way down there, but you can use that dowel as if your finger was back there so that you can push this tab into place. So it's making good contact with this surface. Okay, and that turned out perfect. Okay, so now we have this last tab in here. How the heck are we going to get our glue in there? Well, that's pretty straightforward too. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to grab a scrap piece of paper, and I'm going to put a nice amount of glue right on the very end of it. And we're just going to tuck it right under here. There's no glue on the bottom, so you can literally rub it on the surface and it's not going to come off. We're just going to tuck that in there and just spread that. It's just like you're putting butter on a piece of bread. Spread it onto that section there. That's it. Okay. And then we're going to take that tab and press it up against the inside, just like we've been doing. And again, it's helpful to take your dowel and use that to push that tab up against this surface where my thumb is right here. Okay, and be patient, let that set, especially up here, before you move on. Now, when you're doing that paper method that we just did, it's a little bit harder to know how much glue you got on there because you can't kind of dab it to get it tacky. But this is just a matter of patience at this point. Just want to make sure that it does in fact set and that it has a good grip so that we have a nice sound structure. Very straightforward, okay? And that came out perfect. And don't worry about the little bit of glue that shot out of there, not a big deal. Okay, so now we see up here, we're just gonna need to connect the rest of these sections here using these little tabs. Okay, so we can actually move these out of the way so it's a lot easier to kind of get in there. And you can see the little triangular tab that we need to apply glue to. Okay, and I'm going to dab that with my finger, make it nice and thin, just like that. And then we're going to connect that to its neighbor. Should be nice and straight up and down. And this is where this guy's going to go once we're all done. Okay, there we go. Hold that in place for a moment and then we can move on. So we'll move this one out of the way. I'm going to bring this tab in a little bit. Apply my glue, just a nice thin amount of glue. If you don't want to get your finger in there, you can kind of dab it with a piece of paper. Again, I don't think it's as effective. Paper's like, I know it's 3D in life because we can hold it, but it's flat. Our tips of our fingers are kind of round, and I can really wrap around things a lot better. Just giving you some options here. Okay, so we've got a few more of these to do. Pretty straightforward. This will go a lot faster if you make sure you don't use a lot of glue, just a little bit. And if you can spread it out with your finger like I've been doing, all the better. It'll make it go so much faster. Okay, line that up nicely. Press and hold. And there's your basic shape. Maybe you could take this and do all kinds of stuff with it. Okay, all right, moving on to the next one. And I'm going to dab that. If you get a little bit of glue that shoots out here, it's not the end of the world, because literally that top piece is going to cover this entire thing. So don't drive yourself crazy making sure this is perfect. We want it to be, you know, in the correct shape, but if you get a little bit of glue here, now's the time to get a little sloppy if you want to get sloppy. Okay, there we go. We'll try the paper thing again here. Maybe there's something to it. It's not bad. Not as good as my finger, but it's fun to try new things. Okay, line that up. Press and hold. There we go. And cruising right along. You can even probably use the tip of your glue nozzle as well. It doesn't really, it doesn't give that same dab effect. I feel like something about, maybe it's even your fingerprint, I don't know. Something about using your finger when you dab it like that, it creates almost like a texture with the glue. Almost like there's little hands in there that just grabs that next piece of paper that you're going to put on there. Okay, so similar to what we did with that final long tab here, when we put glue on this and connect it, we want to make sure that we take this tab and tuck it in so that it's inside. Okay, let me spread this glue out a little bit. There we go. Doesn't have to be perfect. Like I said, this is going to be covered up. Line that up. There we go. And that just leaves that one tab in there that I just tucked in. It's right here. You can see it right there. Just going to put a little bit of glue on that and close this shape up. Okay, make sure it's nice and aligned. Voila. Okay, I'd say that is a job well done. That looks cool. Okay, so now, before we put the top on, we're going to start with these guys here, these panels. And the panels are going to go on alternating. Okay, and the idea here is to try to make this as smooth as possible. And we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to make sure that the bottom is nice and lined up. And the top doesn't matter as much because, again, when we put this top piece on, this is going to cover it up. Okay, so, all right, so we're going to start with a pink piece here. And we're going to put our glue about 1/3 of the way down. Essentially what we want to do is just make sure that we have glue for these sections here. We're not worry about the middle at all. So I'm going to go down about this far, and then you could technically just put glue on the whole thing in case, you know, you miss a little spot. So I actually recommend that you do that. Even if the center part doesn't touch, just throw a little glue on there so that we get some going all the way up and down. Okay, we're going to start at the bottom. Okay, and we're going to line that up with the bottom, nice and flush. Okay, and we want this section to be pretty flush with the bottom, and then give it a little bit of a curve or bend. And then we want this top part to be nice and flush. So all the way up to here, roughly where it starts to angle this way. So this whole section from here down and from here up, we want that to be making contact with the main structure. Okay, now this we're going to cover up with some ribbon. So what I'm noticing here is that it's kind of creasing the paper a little bit. There is a way around that, which I'll be happy to show you here with the next one, but that's what we want it to look like. Okay, So we'll grab the next piece and we're just going to alternate these, okay, all the way around. Now what you can do to kind of prevent the creasing in the center is take a little dowel and just kind of train it so you make it a little bit round. Okay, that should help prevent getting creasing there. But like I said, we're going to throw a ribbon on there, so it's not the end of the world if you get a little crease in the center. It's going to mostly be covered up, especially depending on if you have like a nice solid ribbon. Like I have some lace that I'm going to put on there, so it won't cover it completely, but it's still, you're still not going to be able to see it. Okay, so we're going to line that up with the next one here. Make sure it's nice and flush with the bottom, and then you're going to get it nice and flat up against this surface. Hold it down at the bottom, and then just wrap it up to the top, and make sure this part is also nice and flush with the surface. And you can see there that I don't have any creasing or anything of the paper. It looks a lot nicer. Now what I'm noticing with the previous layer here is that part of this little area here is kind of sticking out. So quick remedy for that is just a little dot of glue on a scrap piece of paper. You tuck it under there where you might need a little extra glue. Just kind of spread it on, like I said, like we're buttering some toast, and just press and hold that area down. We want that to be as seamless as possible. This middle part here where it's round, not as important because it's going to be covered up. Okay, and just be patient while you hold that in place. Okay, so we're going to move over here. I'm going to grab another green panel and we're going to do the same thing. Okay, just continue all the way around, repeating the same process. Okay, so just to go over the steps again, to prevent the center of this panel from getting creased, you want to just kind of very gently give it a little bit of a round curve. So what I'm doing is I'm pinching the paper between my finger and the dowel. Let's just pretend it started off straight and flat. Take it and lift it up 90 degrees and just run the dowel through there. Maybe do it from both sides and then give it a little extra crease in the center there. Just want to make it round. All right, so, and for each of these panels, again, it's important that we get glue on the entire surface here, okay, especially out towards the sides and the bottom. So we want the sides on the flat sections, and I'll explain that in a second. We want those to be flush with the actual structure. So again, I'm going to start down here. Okay, getting that nice and aligned at the bottom. We want this panel to be flat up against this surface here, as flat as you can get it. And make sure that this edge here and this edge here are nice and flat. And then take this and pop it up to the top. You want it to be nice and flush with this section here, just before it starts going up. Okay, and we want this to be flat up to here. This section here is the only round part. This part here and the bottom part, we want those to be up against the main structure as close as possible. So you need to be patient because there's some resistance here in the center. Okay, and you want to make sure that that does not pull up. Now there's ways to fix it. It's going to create a little extra work. I'm still going to go over that because I still have some areas that I'm not happy with. And I'll show you how to make this thing really shine. Okay, but in the meantime, just do one at a time here. And we're just repeating the same process all the way around. We'll take a final look at how everything came together here in just a moment, and I'll share some tips with you on how to clean up any potential imperfections you may have. Okay, so that just leaves one more panel for me. Again, concentrating the glue at the top, bottom, as well as the sides. Okay, starting at the bottom, get it nice and centered, nice and aligned with the very bottom. Okay, keep that nice and flush up against that section there, like so. And then you can take and curve it. And I forgot to train this one, actually. You know what? I'm going to do that. I keep forgetting little steps here, and I know there's glue on there. That's okay. Just going to train it I have to reapply my glue, and that's okay. Stuff happens. I'll show you that. Even I make some mistakes here. Okay, so it's nice and trained. Now I'm going to reapply my glue. No big deal. Okay, working that side. Spreading that glue out to the very edges, the top and bottom. And let's give that another go. Nice and aligned with the bottom, nice and flat on this section here. I want those edges to be making contact right up to the curve. I'm just gonna kind of hold my finger there, and then we're gonna wrap this over the top, and we want it to terminate right at this part here, just before it starts going up. And we want that to be as flat as possible. Okay. Now, despite the fact that I trained this, I'm still seeing a little bit of, I'm seeing that the paper is creasing a little bit, but that's okay, because we're going to cover that all up with this, and that will get rid of those little shadows that the creases are creating. So it's not a big deal. Okay, we just want to make sure that these edges here are nice and clean, and it looks as seamless as possible. Okay, so there it is. It actually turned out really nice. And if you're sitting there staring at it, you're going to notice little imperfections here and there. I'm not overly concerned about that. But what I will point out here is you can see how there's a little bit of a gap right there. Now what you can do if you are getting some of those is just take a strip of scrap paper and throw a little bit of glue right on the end. Get it a little thick if you want. There's no glue on the bottom here, so I can literally rest this on the surface, tuck it right under there, and start painting. So it's just kind of spread that glue right onto the area where we need a little extra TLC, and then just press and hold that down so that the seam looks nice and clean there. Okay, and just leave your finger on there until you're sure it's set, because there is some resistance there. It wants to pop up because of this round little section there. Okay, but overall, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I'm going to take a look at any other sections that I feel are maybe not sitting as clean as they possibly can. But again, I think most of it is concentrated here, and that will be covered up with our lace once that's all done. Okay, so with that said, at this point what we can go ahead and do is close this guy up. Okay, and we'll pop that in there. That's going to go over like that. And then we're going to take and glue this down to each of these sections, and that is enough glue to hold it in place. I'm not worried about gluing the top. Maybe if you want, you can technically put a little bit of glue in here, just a few little dots. I wouldn't do a lot because I have a feeling that it might try to kind of come out as we're putting it down. Could be wrong, but I don't know that that's going to help too much. Okay, let me find what I think is going to be my fronts. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, see, I don't think that really did much. So what we're going to do is we're going to start putting glue on these little flaps here. Go easy on the glue here. This will easily come shooting out if you let it. And try to get that glue out to the very tip of that little section. Okay, and make sure it's nice and centered, and just press that down into place. And just hold. We're going to go over to the opposite side. And we put glue on this next section here, opposite of the side that we just did, all the way out to the tip. That with your finger if you think you got too much on there. And press that down. Here we go. And then we'll go 90 degrees to one over to the left or to the right of the one that we just did. Same thing. There we go. And press that down. We'll go opposite. And this fourth one is, once we get this one in, it's not going anywhere. Okay. And pop that into place. Make sure it's nice and centered. And that just leaves four more. These four here. That we need to glue down. Okay. Make sure you're getting that glue out to the tip. Just like that. Now that's not This is not typical cardstock, so I'm actually dabbing this with my finger as well because I don't want, this is not absorbing the glue like normal cardstock would, which gives it more of a tendency to leak out and get onto your other surfaces. So that's why I'm hitting it with my finger here. Okay, there we go. Bring that down. And finally, last one. There we go. And press that down into place. Okay. All right, so there she is. And as I mentioned, I might go in here and clean up some of these little seams here, just to make them look more flush. And again, I can accomplish that by literally just taking a scrap piece of paper, putting a little bit of glue right on the very end of it, and just tucking it under. Make sure there's no glue on the bottom of your strip. Tuck it right under there, paint a little bit of glue in that section, pop it out, and just press that down and hold it. And just be patient. It may take, you know, a minute or so to really get a good hold. Okay, that one, I know it looks good now, but that might pop out, so I'm gonna be patient here and hold it. Okay, so, I mean, there's the ornament. Actually, it's really good. I might be getting a little obsessive compulsive here with the perfection on it. You don't have to do that to yourself, but last step for me is to take my my lace here, and I'm going to, this is going to be my front. I think this is my best side. So I want the end of this to terminate here. It's going to come around here. I'm just trying to figure out how much of this I actually need. Okay, so I'm going to trim it to about here. So we're going to start putting the lace on here, and I'm going to have to hot glue it. Of course, many of you know hot glue is my all-time favorite type of glue. And many of you also know that that was extreme sarcasm. All right, so I'm going to try to be pretty gentle with this here. I don't need a ton. And the worst part about the hot glue is just the little wispy, frilly things that sometimes stay on there. I'm trying to rub it off of the nozzle there before it has a chance to get onto my project. But you want to essentially just get it right in the center there. I'm just going to wrap that all the way around. Okay, so that looks pretty good, I'd say. I'm going to try to keep it nice and straight. Okay, just like that. Take a look at it from the angle. That looks good. Okay, so we'll flip it over to reveal the next section that we need to put hot glue on. I'm going very easy on it because I don't want it shooting out all over the place. But of course we need at least enough for it to stay on. Okay. That little circular motion I did there was to try to get rid of the little wispy stuff that sometimes hangs around. Okay, that looks pretty straight. I think I have some of this section here. Let's see. I think I got about half of it. Okay, so let's reveal the rest of it here. Really easy on the glue here. Get off of that, mister. There you go. Wonderful. Okay, we can go on the other side here. And I cut it to almost a size. A little extra just in case. Okay, flare that back, get it exposed, and with that glue, and it's just some things that you can't really completely replicate with paper. And I'm going to give hot glue some love here, which I don't normally do because it's kind of a pain, but the cool thing about it is that it does dry really quick. I gotta give it that. And it really, once it's on, it ain't going nowhere. I guess from a paper standpoint, I wouldn't fix anything in your house with hot glue, but for paper projects, it's perfect. Okay, so again, taking a look at the positioning from the previous section. Just kind of making sure that it's at the same height. Get it right on there. That looks great, and it just leaves one more. And aside from adding a couple rhinestones onto the bow, mine's done. I know that you guys are going to have a good time figuring out or deciding what sort of bling you want to add to it. Because after all, these are ornaments. Once you put them on the tree, the little lights on the tree will have a field day if you add little rhinestones and various embellishments on yours. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that I'm going to take this white pom-pom and I'm going to glue that to the bottom just to finish it off. And it's going to make it look really pretty. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Let me just do that. But yeah, no, this one's a little bit, because of its shape, you know, it's not horrible. You want to take your time with it. And remember the little tips I mentioned about using a scrap piece of paper to get any of the little areas that maybe you're not completely in love with to sit nice and flat. That's going to save you. And just pop that right on the bottom. And there we have our beautiful ornament. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please take a moment and visit our YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button while you're there. Make sure you hit the little bell so that you get notifications anytime we release a new product, whether it be paid or free. And if you make this or anything from our new bundle of ornaments, I would love to see it, and so would the rest of our community. I think we're about 33,000 strong now. So head on over to your Facebook and do a search for Dreaming Tree Group, or you can type in the little URL that you see here at the bottom. But yeah, happy ornament making. I can't wait to see what you guys do with this one, and I look forward to crafting with you soon. Hey, thanks for crafting along with me. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, check out some of our other videos, and also please consider hitting that subscribe button. And don't forget to visit our site and check out our free SVG section, where we have over 140 free SVG files complete with assembly videos. I look forward to crafting with you soon.